Remember those protests last year that we just kind of forgot about because of 2020 and COVID-19 and everything? Yeah, they're still an issue. So you might be thinking, wait, those are still ongoing? Well, sadly, issues regarding human rights don't just disappear if you want them to. It's not that easy. So let me just give you a recap of all that has happened so far and why it's an important issue in 2020. In June 2019, the chief executive of Hong Kong, Carrie Lam, put forward a bill titled the Fugitive Offenders and Mutual Legal Assistance in Criminal Matters Bill 2019, also known as the Extradition Bill. The bill allowed the government to detain any wanted outlaws in mainland China and Taiwan and bring them back to Hong Kong. The bill basically allowed for extraditions between mainland China, Hong Kong, and Taiwan to occur on a case-by-case basis, without requiring the existence of an extradition treaty in the first place. And ultimately, this pissed lots of people off. Why? Well, because ever since Hong Kong returned under Chinese jurisdiction in 1997, the city has been under a system known as One Country, Two Systems. Formally, Hong Kong was under Chinese rule, but legally, Hong Kong was allowed to have its own governmental system. However, under the new extradition bill, the system moves from one country, two systems to more like one country, one system. This bill ends up directly connecting Hong Kong to the mainland Chinese justice system, and many fear that this would lead to anti-mainland Hong Kong citizens being arrested and unfairly extradited to the mainland. As I'm sure we all know, this ultimately led to massive protests occurring all over Hong Kong. At one point, over 1 million protesters had been protesting. And to put this into perspective, Hong Kong has a population of over 7 million. This meant that at its peak, nearly 1 out of every 7 Hong Kong citizens were out on the streets, fighting for their liberty and freedom. This brings us back to 2020. Do keep in mind that as of October of last year, the extradition bill had already been officially withdrawn. However, this does not mean that protests have died down. Over the past year, many policies have been done by the Hong Kong government to suggest that the movement towards authoritarianism is not about to die down. Election efforts for the year were pushed back numerous times, which many suspect to be an effort to maintain the power of Carrie Lam, who is despised by many pro-Hong Kong supporters, because Carrie Lam is seen as the traitor who passed the extradition bill and sold Hong Kong to China. Even more alarming is the recent passing of a new national security law, which not only allows the police to freely arrest any and all protesters suspected of terrorism and espionage, but also increases the ties to mainland China even further by granting Beijing a lot of power and jurisdiction in court trials in Hong Kong. This clearly spells the end of one country, two systems as we know it. Despite many efforts to suppress protests ever since the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, the protests have continued. While it is true that the extradition bill from last year has been retrieved, the fight is no longer just about the extradition bill. The Hong Kong protests and its protesters represent the last war between Hong Kong and total authoritarianism.